The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. The Vorthak crouched in the center of the room, its four eyes darting between the three humans who had positioned themselves in a loose triangle around it. Its perfect predatory instincts screamed contradictory messages: attack, retreat, assess threat level, protect vital areas. Go Yun, still cowering in the corner, watched in amazement. "They are going to get themselves killed," he whispered to Nam Hyun. But something was wrong with that assessment. The humans did not move like creatures about to die. They moved with careful precision, each step planned, each position chosen for maximum advantage. The Vorthak seemed to sense this too. Its scales flickered between hunting patterns and defensive colorations, unable to decide if it was predator or prey in this situation. Then Jung-ho tried to crawl away from the center of the conflict, and his movement broke the tense stillness. The Vorthak struck like a released spring, lunging toward the helpless Tidewalker with claws extended. But instead of finding easy prey, it found Day. The human had moved the instant the predator committed to its attack, intercepting with a speed that seemed impossible for someone without enhanced reflexes. The Vorthak's claws raked across Day's shoulder, tearing through fabric and flesh, but instead of dropping the wounded prey, Day grabbed the creature's extended limb. Using the Vorthak's own momentum against it, Day twisted and pulled, sending the predator crashing into a lab table with a sound like thunder. The classroom fell completely silent except for the crash of breaking equipment. The Vorthak rolled to its feet, shaking its head in confusion. In its entire existence, it had never had prey grab it back. The concept was so alien that its brain took precious seconds to process what had happened. Blood ran down Day's arm from 4 parallel cuts, but he showed no sign of pain or shock. If anything, he looked more focused than before. "Interesting," he said, examining the wounds clinically. "Claws are sharp, but not as deep-cutting as I expected. Meant for grasping rather than killing." Sol moved closer, her improvised weapon ready. "Makes sense. Vorthaks are ambush predators. They rely on surprise and overwhelming force, not extended combat. One flanked from the other side, which means once the initial attack fails, they have no backup strategy." The alien students listened to this analysis with growing unease. The humans were discussing the galaxy's most feared predator like it was a puzzle to be solved, not a mortal threat to be feared. The Vortex snarled and launched itself at Day again, but this time it was ready for resistance. Its attack was more careful, more measured. Day sidestepped with fluid grace, moving like water around the creature's claws. As it passed, he struck out with his fist, connecting solidly with the Vorthak's flank. The predator stumbled more from surprise than damage. It spun to face him, scales shifting to angry reds and blacks. "Now it is mad," observed Sol. "Good," one replied. "Angry predators make mistakes." Choi Min, pressed against the wall with several other students, stared in disbelief. How can they be so calm? Do they not understand they could die? But as she watched, she began to realize something disturbing. The humans did understand they could die. They just did not seem to care. They moved with the cold efficiency of creatures who had accepted that death was always a possibility and had decided to face it head-on. The Vorthak attacked again, but this time Sul was ready. As it committed to its lunge, she threw her improvised weapon, a broken piece of lab equipment, not at the creature, but at its feet. The predator stumbled off balance and Juan struck with his chair leg. The blow connected with the Vorthak's head with a solid thunk. The creature staggered, shaking its head to clear it. "Coordination," breathed Thrum Chorus in horrified fascination. Perfect pack coordination without verbal communication. It was true. The three humans moved as if they shared a single mind, each anticipating the other's actions with eerie precision. When Day feinted left, Sol automatically moved right. When Juan created an opening, Day exploited it without being told. The Vorthak was beginning to realize it was not fighting three separate prey animals. It was fighting a single three-bodied predator with multiple attack vectors and shared intelligence. Professor Veltari worked frantically at her control panel, trying to restore the containment system, but her hands shook as she watched the impossible scene unfolding before her. Everything she knew about Deathworld species suggested they should be tough survivors, yes, but still fundamentally prey animals when faced with a true apex predator. These humans were not acting like prey. The Vorthak made another attack, this one more desperate than calculated. It was learning that its usual tactics, speed, surprise, overwhelming force, were useless against opponents who predicted its moves and countered accordingly. Day took another set of claw marks, this time across his ribs, but his response was to grab the creature's attacking limb and twist it behind its back, using a leverage technique that forced the Vorthak to its knees. The predator writhed and struggled, but Day held on with grim determination, his face showing the focused concentration of someone performing a difficult but familiar task. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" gasped Imda-1, moving to help secure the creature answered without taking his eyes off the Vorthak. "Every human child learns basic self-defense. Our world has many dangerous animals." The casual way he said it sent chills through the watching aliens. Basic self-defense? This level of coordinated combat was basic? Sol had found another improvised weapon, a length of cable from the broken lab equipment. She was fashioning it into a restraint with quick, efficient knots that spoke of considerable practice. "Almost got it," she called to the others. The Vorthak, realizing it was about to be restrained, made one final desperate bid for freedom. It twisted in Day's grip with incredible strength, breaking loose and spinning to attack with all four claws extended. But instead of finding vulnerable human flesh, its claws met one's chair leg, wielded with the skill of someone who understood leverage and timing. The impact sent vibrations up the creature's arms, and in that moment of shocked numbness, Sol's cable loop dropped over its head and tightened around its neck. Not enough to harm it, but enough to control it. The three humans stepped back, breathing hard but victorious. The galaxy's most feared predator knelt on the floor of a classroom, held in place by improvised restraints and three college students who had never seen one before today. The silence stretched until Nam Hyun finally whispered what everyone was thinking. "What are you?" Day looked at him, genuine confusion on his blood-streaked face. "We are humans. We told you yesterday. But humans are supposed to be," Go-Yoon struggled for words, "peaceful, civilized." Sol smiled, and there was something both warm and terrifying in that expression. "We are peaceful. This was us being peaceful." One nodded toward the subdued Vorthak. "If we were not peaceful, it would be dead now." The alien student stared at the three humans, Day with his torn shirt and bloodied arms, Sol with her improvised weapons, one still holding his makeshift club, and tried to process what they had just witnessed. Somewhere in the back of each alien mind, a small voice whispered a disturbing truth. If this was what humans looked like when they were being peaceful, what would they look like when they decided to stop being peaceful? The answer was a thought too frightening to contemplate. The Vorthak moved like liquid lightning. In the flickering emergency lights, it crossed the room in a single bound, its claws extended toward Yoon-jae. The Etherian student barely had time to raise his crystalline arms before the predator struck. The impact sent crystal fragments flying across the room like sharp snow. Yoon-jae's protective outer shell cracked with sounds like breaking glass, and he collapsed backward, his chair toppling over. The classroom erupted into chaos. Students screamed and scattered in every direction, their careful seating arrangement dissolving into panic. Chairs crashed to the floor as bodies pressed toward the exits, but the automatic lockdown had sealed all the doors. Red warning lights bathed everything in the color of blood. "The exits are locked," Professor Veltari shouted over the noise. "Security protocol during containment breach." Nam Hyun and Go-Yoon huddled together in the corner, their soft fur standing on end. Their species had no defensive abilities beyond running and hiding, and both options were now impossible. Bang Shu tried desperately to fly, but his delicate wings were designed for open sky, not enclosed spaces. He crashed into the ceiling repeatedly, his hollow bones making him too fragile for the panicked flight he needed. "Cannot compute escape route," Thrum Chorus wailed in harmony. "All variables indicate capture probability approaches 100%. The Vorthak landed next to Yoon-jae's fallen form and paused, tilting its head to examine its handiwork. The Etherian was still alive but badly injured, clear fluid leaking from cracks in his crystalline skin. The sight and smell of vulnerable prey triggered something deeper in the predator's brain. Its scales shifted to full hunting mode, deep black with silver lines that seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. Its four eyes began tracking the moving students with mechanical precision. Imda pressed herself against the far wall, her aerial species' hollow bones making her feel fragile as paper. "This is impossible," she whispered. Vorthacs are supposed to be docile in captivity. That was before it smelled fear, came a calm voice. Everyone turned to look. In the middle of the chaos, Day had not moved from his seat. He was watching the Vorthak with intense focus like a student observing an interesting experiment. Fear changes everything, he continued, his voice steady despite the screaming around him. It tells predators that the hunt is on. The Vorthak's head snapped toward him at the sound of his voice. For a moment, Predator and human stared at each other across the room. "Why are you not running?" gasped Choi Min, her skin flickering through different camouflage colors in rapid succession. "Running triggers chase response," Sewell answered. She had also remained in her seat, though her hand was now gripping something, a piece of broken lab equipment she had quietly picked up when the chaos started. One was the third human still seated. He had detached one leg from his chair and was holding it like a club, testing its weight and balance. The Vorthak seemed confused by their behavior. Its evolutionary programming told it that prey should run, hide, or cower. These three creatures were doing none of those things. A new scream drew its attention away from the humans. Jung-ho, a tidewalker, had slipped on his own defensive secretions while trying to reach a door. He lay on his back, sliding helplessly as his body pumped out more slippery oils in response to his terror. The predator's head tracked the movement like a cat watching a laser pointer. It began stalking toward the fallen tidewalker, moving with the patient confidence of a creature that knew its prey had nowhere to go. Jung-ho tried to crawl backward, but his species' defensive oils made it impossible to gain traction. "Help me," he called out. Several students started toward him, then stopped as the Vorthak swiveled its head in their direction. Its message was clear: approach and become the next target. "Nobody can help him," whimpered Ote. "Vorthak hunting success rate is 97%, Dave finished. "Against normal prey." He stood up. The movement was slow and controlled, nothing like the panicked scrambling of the other students. The Vorthak paused its approach toward Jung-ho and turned all four eyes toward this new development. "Day, what are you doing?" Professor Veltari called out. "Evening the odds," he replied. He took a step toward the Vorthak. Then another. The predator's scales rippled with confusion. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. Prey ran away from predators, not toward them. "Get back," screamed Kang Min. "It will kill you." But Day continued his slow, steady advance. His eyes never left the Vorthak, and his hands hung loose at his sides in a way that looked relaxed but ready. The creature backed up half a step, its head tilting as it tried to process this unprecedented behavior. In millions of years of evolution, no prey species had ever voluntarily approached a hunting Vorthak. "Fascinating," breathed Seo Jun despite his terror. "It does not know how to respond." Sewell rose from her seat, still holding her improvised weapon. "Predators expect certain behaviors from prey," she said, as if she was discussing academic theory instead of a life-or-death situation. "When those behaviors change, predators get confused." One also stood, chair leg in hand. Confusion creates opportunity. Now the Vorthak was truly puzzled. Three prey animals were not only refusing to run, they were approaching in a coordinated pattern. Its perfect predatory instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, had no template for this situation. The creature let out a low growl of frustration and warning. Day smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I know that sound," he said quietly. "That is the sound a predator makes when it realizes it might not be the only predator in the room." The alien students stared in shock. What was he talking about? Humans were from a death world, yes, but they were still prey animals. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor or weapons. But as they watched, something seemed to change about the three humans. Their posture shifted subtly. Their movements became more fluid and purposeful. Most unsettling of all, they began to spread out, moving to surround the Vorthak from three sides. "Pack behavior," whispered Thrum Chorus in horrified recognition. "They are exhibiting pack hunting behavior." The realization sent a chill through the classroom. Pack hunters were among the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, species that could coordinate attacks, share information, and work together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. The Vorthak seemed to sense the change too. Its confident hunting stance wavered as it tried to keep all three humans in sight simultaneously. For the first time since the containment breach began, the perfect predator looked uncertain. Jung-ho, still lying helplessly in his own defensive secretions, stared up at the three humans who were putting themselves in danger to save him. "Why?" he gasped. Day glanced down at him briefly. "Because that is what people do." The simple statement hung in the air like a challenge. Here were three individuals willingly facing a creature that could kill any of them easily, not because they had to, but because they chose to. The Vorthak's scales shifted to a darker pattern. It was no longer hunting confused prey. It was facing something it had never encountered before. It was facing humans who had decided to fight back. The next morning brought an electric feeling to Xenobiology Lab 7. Students arrived early, chattering with nervous excitement about the promised demonstration. The classroom had been rearranged overnight. All the desks now faced a large containment field in the center of the room, its blue energy walls humming softly with power. Professor Veltari stood beside a control panel, checking readings on multiple screens. Her crystalline features reflected the glow of the containment field, making her look like she was carved from colored light. "Please take your seats," she called out as students filed in. "Remember, maintain quiet voices. The Vorthak has excellent hearing." Nam Hyun chose a seat in the very back corner as far from the containment field as possible. His soft fur was standing on end and his large eyes kept darting toward the exits. Next to him, Go-Yun was practically trembling. "Maybe we should skip class today," Go-Yun whispered. "We cannot," Nam Hyun replied, though his voice shook. Professor Veltari said attendance was required. Near the middle of the room, Choi Min tried to project confidence. As a tidewalker, her people had some defensive abilities. They could change the color of their skin for camouflage and release slippery oils to escape from predators. "My species has survived for millions of years," she told her friend Kang Min. "We know how to handle dangerous situations." Bang. She floated on his cushion, preening his feathers with nervous energy. "Shadow stalkers are ambush predators," he announced loudly. "My people are aerial. We can simply fly away if there is any problem." In the back, a collective entity known as Thrum Chorus occupied 3 connected seats. The hive mind species spoke in harmony, their voices overlapping. Vorthak hunting patterns documented. Success rate 97%. Preferred prey: warm-blooded vertebrates weighing 20 to 200 kilograms. This information did nothing to calm the other students. The 3 humans sat together in the front section, close to the containment field. They looked relaxed, almost casual. Day was reading something on his tablet. Saul was sketching in a notebook. One was watching Professor Veltari work with mild interest. "Are you not worried?" asked Imda, an aerial wing student whose hollow bones made her incredibly light but also fragile. Saul looked up from her sketching. "Worried about what?" "The Vorthak. What if something goes wrong?" One shrugged. "The containment field looks solid, and Professor Veltari is experienced. But what if—" A deep thrumming sound filled the room. The lights dimmed slightly as power was diverted to the transport system. A circular platform in the floor began to rise, bringing something up from the Academy's secure holding areas. The platform locked into place with a solid click. On it sat a smaller containment unit, its walls made of the same blue energy as the larger field. Inside, something moved. The Vorthak Shadow Stalker was beautiful in the way that perfect machines are beautiful. It stood about as tall as a human but was built entirely for killing. Its body was sleek and muscular, covered in scales that shifted color constantly. 6 legs ended in razor-sharp claws that could grip any surface. Its head was elongated, with 4 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums of light. But the most unsettling thing about the creature was how still it was. It sat in the center of its cage like a coiled spring, watching the students with alien intelligence. "Magnificent," breathed Professor Veltari. "The Vorthak represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Observe how its scales change color to match its surroundings." The creature's hide rippled, shifting from dark gray to match the floor of its container, then to blue-green to blend with the energy walls. "Its claws can cut through most metals," the professor continued. "Its reflexes are faster than almost any prey species can react to. And its intelligence is remarkable. Vorthaks can solve complex puzzles and remember individual prey animals for years." Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. However, Professor Veltari smiled reassuringly. "Vorthaks are also surprisingly docile when not hunting. In captivity, they become almost cat-like, spending most of their time resting. As if responding to her words, the Vorthak settled down, tucking its legs beneath its body. Its 4 eyes half closed, giving it an almost sleepy appearance. See? Perfectly harmless when properly contained. That was when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light. Warning signals began beeping throughout the academy. Solar flare activity detected, came an automated voice from the intercom system, all non-essential systems switching to backup power. Estimated duration 47 minutes. Professor Veltari's face went pale. Her fingers flew over the control panel. No, she muttered. The containment field around the Vorthak flickered. What is happening? Called out Seo-jun, a gentle one whose voice cracked with fear. The solar flare is causing electromagnetic interference, Professor Veltari explained, still working frantically at her controls. The containment system is having trouble maintaining power levels. The field flickered again, more noticeably this time. Inside its cage, the Vorthak raised its head. Its 4 eyes opened fully, and its scales began to shift to a deep predatory black. Can you fix it? Asked Jung-ho, a tidewalker whose gills were fluttering rapidly with anxiety. I am trying, but the containment field failed. For a moment, nobody moved. The Vorthak sat perfectly still in the center of the room, no longer separated from them by anything more than empty air. Then it stood up. The movement was liquid smooth, like water flowing upward. The creature rose to its full height and turned its head, scanning the room with methodical precision. Its 4 eyes fixed on different students, evaluating, calculating. It could smell them now. 27 warm-blooded creatures, their hearts pumping faster as fear flooded their systems. The scent of adrenaline filled the air like a dinner bell. Ote, a nervous academic hive mind, began calculating frantically. Distance to nearest exit, 15 meters. Vorthak maximum speed, estimated 60 kilometers per hour. Time to reach door, approximately 0.9 seconds. Time for average student to reach door, 4.3 seconds. The math was not encouraging. The Vorthak took one experimental step forward. Its claws clicked against the floor with a sound like breaking glass. Several students whimpered. Nam Hyun was hyperventilating, his small chest rising and falling rapidly. Go Yun had curled into a ball, his natural prey instincts telling him to make himself as small as possible. Bang Shu tried to activate his flight response, but his hollow bones, perfect for atmospheric flight, made him incredibly fragile. In the closed room, he could only flutter uselessly against the ceiling. Nobody move, whispered Professor Veltari. Sudden movements will trigger its hunting response. But it was too late for that advice. The Vorthak's 4 eyes had already locked onto its first target. It had selected Yoon Jae, an Etherian student whose crystalline body structure made him look fragile and vulnerable. The creature's scales shifted to a hunting pattern, black, with silver streaks that seemed to move in the emergency lighting. Its body lowered into a crouch. In the front row, the 3 humans were perfectly still. But while the alien students froze in terror, the humans were freezing for a different reason. They were watching, evaluating, preparing. Day's hand moved almost imperceptibly to his pocket, where he kept a small, multi-tool. Soul's eyes were tracking the creature's movement, calculating angles and distances. One was slowly, carefully, reaching for the leg of his chair. The Vorthak coiled its muscles. Professor Veltari made one last desperate attempt at her control panel. The emergency lighting flickered, and in that moment of darkness, the perfect predator struck. The morning light filtered through the massive viewing ports of Nexus Academy, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floors. Students from dozens of worlds moved through the corridors like a living museum of evolution. Some floated on gossamer wings, others glided on tentacles, and a few walked on legs like the humans did. Professor Veltari stood at the front of Xenobiology Lab 7, her crystalline skin catching the light and throwing it back in gentle sparkles. She was tall and elegant, like a living sculpture made of blue-tinted glass. Her species, the Etherians, were known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and patience. Today we welcome 3 new exchange students from the Sol system, she announced, her voice carrying the musical quality that all Etherians possessed. They come from a world called Earth, specifically from the Korean Federation. The classroom buzzed with quiet conversation. 24 students from different worlds sat in specially designed seats that accommodated their various body types. Near the back, Nam-hyun shifted nervously. His people, the gentle ones, were small and covered in soft, downy fur. They ate only plants and spent their lives in peaceful meditation. The idea of meeting students from a death world made his large eyes dart around anxiously. "I heard humans are dangerous," whispered Choi Min to her friend. She was a tidewalker, her blue-green skin glistening with moisture from the humidifier built into her desk. Her people lived in the oceans of their homeworld and were known for being careful and thoughtful. Bang Shi, perched on a floating cushion designed for his aerial species, fluffed his feathers dismissively. "Dangerous? They look so slow and clumsy. My people have been flying between the stars for thousands of years. These humans barely left their own solar system." The door slid open with a soft hiss. 3 humans walked in and the classroom fell silent. They looked ordinary. That was the first thing everyone noticed. No wings, no tentacles, no natural armor or weapons. They walked on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and their skin was a plain pinkish-brown color. They were neither particularly tall nor short, neither obviously strong nor weak. The first human was Kim Dae. He had dark hair and dark eyes, and he moved with a quiet, careful way that reminded some students of how prey animals walked when they thought predators might be watching. He nodded politely to the class and took a seat in the middle section. The second was Park Sol, a female human with her hair tied back in a simple style. She smiled at the other students, showing small white teeth, and chose a seat near the window where she could see outside. The third was Lee Wan. He was a bit taller than the other 2 and carried himself with confidence. He had been at the academy for almost a year already, studying how different species got along with each other. "Please introduce yourselves," Professor Veltari said gently. Dae stood first. "My name is Kim Dae. I come from Seoul on Earth. I study biology and I am interested in learning about life on other worlds." His voice was calm and steady. Sol stood next. "I am Park Sol, also from Seoul. I want to understand how different species solve problems together." She sat down with a quick, efficient movement. One was last. "Lee Wan. I have been here studying interspecies relations. I hope to help my people understand our place in the galactic community better." The alien students watched them carefully. These humans seemed so normal, not at all like the stories they had heard about Deathworld species. Go Yoon, another gentle one, raised a trembling hand. "Is it true that your world has large predators that hunt other animals?" Dae nodded. "Yes, we have many predators. Lions, tigers, sharks, bears. But most humans live in cities now, away from dangerous animals." "How do you sleep at night?" asked Kang Min, a tidewalker whose gills fluttered nervously. "Knowing such creatures exist on your world?" Sol tilted her head, looking confused. "We have locks on our doors and windows. Most predators avoid human settlements anyway." This answer seemed to puzzle the aliens even more. How could anyone be so calm about living with predators? Professor Veltari clapped her hands, the sound like crystal bells ringing. "Now that we have met our new friends, let us begin today's lesson. We will study predator and prey relationships in different ecosystems." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Images of various creatures appeared, floating in the air like ghosts made of light. "Every ecosystem needs balance," she explained. "Predators control the population of prey species, which prevents overgrazing and maintains healthy plant communities." The display showed a peaceful meadow on the Gentle One's homeworld, where small furry creatures grazed on sweet grasses under twin suns. But some worlds, Professor Veltari continued, have more complex predator-prey relationships. The scene changed to show Earth's African savanna, with lions stalking zebras across golden grasslands. Several students gasped. Bangshi's feathers stood on end. "Those creatures are enormous. How do the plant-eaters survive?" One answered quietly. "They run fast, stay in groups, and learn to watch for danger. The ones that survive have children who are also good at surviving." "That seems so violent," whispered Nam-hyun. Dae shrugged. "It is natural. Both predators and prey become stronger and smarter because of it." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact and calm, sent a small chill through the classroom. Here was someone who talked about life and death struggles like other people talked about the weather. Professor Veltari noticed the reaction. "Tomorrow we will have a special demonstration. The Academy has arranged for us to observe a Vorthak shadow stalker. one of the galaxy's most efficient predators. Do not worry, it will be safely contained. The room erupted in excited chatter. A real Vorthak. The Shadow Stalkers were legendary creatures, spoken of in whispers across 1,000 worlds. They were perfect hunters, fast, smart, and deadly. Have any of you ever seen a Vorthak before? Professor Veltari asked the humans. All three shook their heads. No, said Sol. But we have read about them. They sound very impressive. The word hung in the air. Most species would have said terrifying or dangerous, but the humans said impressive, like they were talking about an interesting museum exhibit. As the class ended and students began filing out, small groups formed naturally. The aliens clustered together, chattering nervously about tomorrow's demonstration. They made plans to sit in the back of the classroom, as far from the Vorthak as possible. The three humans walked together, talking quietly among themselves. Should be interesting, Day said. I wonder how it compares to Earth predators, Sewell mused. One nodded. It will be good to see how other worlds developed hunting strategies. Behind them, the alien students exchanged worried glances. There was something unsettling about how calmly the humans discussed meeting one of the galaxy's most feared predators, something that suggested they had their own ideas about what made a creature dangerous, but they pushed those thoughts aside. After all, humans were just another species trying to learn and grow in the vast community of galactic civilization. Tomorrow would be educational. Tomorrow would be safe. Tomorrow, they would learn just how wrong they were about both of those things. The Vorthak tested its restraints with careful, methodical movements. The cable around its neck was not tight enough to hurt, but it was positioned perfectly to control the creature's head movements. Every time it tried to lunge forward, the restraint redirected its momentum harmlessly to the side. Sol noticed the testing behavior immediately. It is learning the limits of its restraints, she observed. We need to be ready for when it figures out how to break free. One shifted his grip on his improvised weapon. How long until the containment field comes back online? Professor Veltari glanced up from her control panel, her crystalline features pale with stress. The main power grid is still affected by solar flare activity. Maybe 20 more minutes, 20 minutes. The alien students absorbed this information with growing dread. 20 minutes of being trapped in a room with a galaxy-class predator. But the three humans seemed to view this as simply another problem to solve. We need to keep it calm, Day said, wiping blood from his arm with his torn shirt. The wounds were still bleeding, but he ignored them with the same casual attitude someone might show toward a paper cut. The Vorthak's 4 eyes tracked his movement, and its scales shifted to a darker hunting pattern. The scent of human blood was driving its predatory instincts to new heights. It wants to finish what it started, Sewell noted. Wounded prey triggers feeding response. Kang Min, huddled against the wall with other terrified students, found her voice. Maybe you should move away from it. The blood smell is making it more aggressive. Day looked at her with mild surprise. Moving away would show weakness. That would make it more aggressive, not less. Instead, he took a step closer to the restrained predator. The Vorthak's reaction was immediate and violent. It lunged against its restraints with such force that the cable holding it creaked under the strain. Its claws scraped against the floor, leaving deep gouges in the metal, but Day held his ground, meeting the creature's 4-eyed glare with steady calm. Fascinating, breathed Ote. He is establishing dominance through direct confrontation. One nodded. Backing down from an aggressive predator is the worst thing you can do. It tells them you are prey. So what are you? Whispered Young-ho, still sitting in a puddle of his own defensive secretions. The question hung in the air like smoke. What were they? They looked like any other bipedal species, no claws, no fangs, no natural armor or weapons. But they had just defeated a creature that could kill most galactic species without effort. The Vorthak seemed to be wrestling with the same question. Its perfect evolutionary programming had no category for what it was facing. These creatures moved like prey but fought like predators. They showed pack coordination but also individual initiative. Most confusing of all, they did not seem afraid. Fear was the foundation of all predator-prey relationships. Predators inspired fear, prey felt fear. It was the natural order of things. But these humans felt no fear. The Vorthak tested its restraints again, this time with more intelligence behind the effort. It had learned the limits of the cable's strength and was beginning to work on the knots that held it in place. Sol saw the behavior immediately. It is working on the restraints. We have maybe 5 minutes before it breaks free. The alien students whimpered. 5 minutes felt like no time at all. But one was already moving, gathering more broken lab equipment to fashion additional restraints. Then we make new ones. As he worked, he talked in the same calm, educational tone that Professor Veltari might use during a normal lesson. The key to controlling any predator is understanding what motivates it, he explained, testing the strength of a piece of cable. Most species assume predators are motivated by bloodlust or cruelty. But that is not true. Predators are motivated by success. Sol joined him in gathering materials. They want to hunt successfully, feed successfully, survive successfully. When they realize they cannot succeed, they change tactics. Bang Shir, still attempting to fly in the limited space of the classroom, managed to gasp out a question. What tactics? Usually retreat, Day answered, never taking his eyes off the Vorthak. But this one cannot retreat, so it will try different approaches until it finds one that works. As if responding to his words, the Vorthak suddenly changed its behavior. Instead of struggling against the restraints, it went completely still. Its scales shifted from aggressive hunting patterns to neutral grays and browns. Playing dead, suggested Imda hopefully. No, Sul said. Playing harmless. Watch its eyes. The alien students looked more carefully. The Vorthak's 4 eyes were half closed in a convincing imitation of docility, but they were still tracking every movement in the room with predatory calculation. It is trying to make us lower our guard, Juan explained, finishing his work on a second restraint. This is actually more dangerous than the aggressive approach. Professor Veltari paused in her work to stare at them. How do you know so much about predator behavior? The 3 humans exchanged glances. Earth has many predators, Day said finally. We had to learn. But you are not predators yourselves, protested Choi Min. You eat plants as well as meat. You are omnivores, not hunters. Sol tilted her head thoughtfully. What makes you think we are not hunters? The question sent a chill through the room. The alien students looked at the 3 humans with new eyes, trying to see them as something other than slightly unusual fellow sapients. Day's movements as he watched the Vorthak. Fluid, patient, ready to explode into action at any moment. Sol's quick efficiency in turning classroom materials into weapons and restraints. One's casual expertise in combat techniques and animal behavior. You hunt your own food? Asked Nam Hyun in a tiny voice. Not anymore, one admitted. We have agriculture and manufacturing now, but our ancestors hunted for millions of years. The instincts do not just disappear. Thrum Chorus processed this information with growing horror. Persistence hunting, pack coordination, tool use, pattern recognition. You are apex predators that developed sapience. Most sapient species evolved from prey animals, Sol said. Herbivores who developed intelligence to hide from predators, or small creatures who used wit to avoid being eaten. But humans developed from something different. From what? Whispered Go Yun, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Day finally looked away from the Vorthak to meet the alien's eyes. From the things that ate the other things. The classroom fell silent except for the hum of failing electrical systems and the distant sound of alarms, echoing through the academy's corridors. The Vorthak chose that moment to make its move. It had worked one of its claws under the cable restraint and, in a burst of perfectly timed action, snapped the line and lunged toward the nearest group of students. But the humans were ready. They moved as one, intercepting the creature before it could reach its targets. But this time the Vorthak was ready for them too. The battle that followed was unlike anything the alien students had ever seen. It was not the chaotic struggle of panic, but the deadly dance of 2 apex predators fighting for dominance. The Vorthak had speed, natural weapons, and millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The humans had intelligence, cooperation, and something the Vorthak had never encountered before: the willingness to accept injury in order to inflict defeat. When Day took another set of claw marks to protect Sol's flank, he did not retreat or cry out. He used the moment of contact to grab the attacking limb and control it. When Sol sacrificed her improvised weapon to block an attack meant for Juan, she immediately began fashioning another from the debris around her. When Juan put himself between the creature and the injured Yoon Jae, taking a blow that sent him staggering, he used his position to drive the Vorthak back toward the center of the room where his partners could flank it. They fought like they had done this before. They fought like they were built for it. And slowly, impossibly, the galaxy's perfect predator began to realize it was losing.